Okay, I'm going to call to order this committee of the whole meeting. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on a traditional unceded territory of the Stanawas First Nation. First item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. I'll move that the July 16, 2025 committee of the whole meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Savage. Any discussion? Okay, oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, you're just doing a test? Okay. I'll move to call in question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Takes us on to public input period. So persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record and may speak once for up to 2 minutes unless council resolves otherwise and are limited to providing comment on this evening's agenda. Comments must be directed to the chair and must not be directed to individual council members, staff, or the audience and must not include personnel issues. I know we have a couple presenters here, one member of the public. Anybody wishing to make? Okay, nothing. And anybody remotely registered? Okay, moving on to new business. So we have the proposed updates to the development cost charge bylaw. So Director Robinson, do you want to lead us into this discussion, please?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Just some brief comments before I hand it over to our experts at Coors Engineering. Staff have been working diligently with Coors over the last year or so on the development cost charge bylaw. We've identified different options that we'd like council's input on that we're presenting to you tonight. That's in the form of the 4 motions you see on the agenda in front of you. The guidance that council provides at this meeting will then help staff to prepare the actual amending bylaw, and we'll start the formal, highly legislated and regulated process of updating a new development cost charge bylaw. So that's kind of where we are in the process. As you can see from the very detailed background report prepared by our experts, there's quite a lot of work that goes into a development cost charge bylaw. There's a number of projects that have to be evaluated and updated, and all that background work has been done and is presented to you tonight. I'll leave my remarks there, and when ready, Your Worship, you can hand it over to Coors.
Sure, I think I'm ready. So we have a couple of presenters tonight. I don't know if there's a lead, but we have Mr. Holmes and Mr. Hoffman from Coors Engineering this evening. So when you're ready, you can just go to the microphone and press the button, make it go red. I don't know why they don't go green, but I wish someone would explain that. It doesn't make sense.
Thank you, Mayor and Worship. I'm Chris Holmes with Coors, and we've produced 2 reports for council. The first report is the technical report that lays out the new calculations for the DCCs, and then there was a subsequent report that looked at servicing options and different scenarios for which DCCs could be increased or decreased depending on which option was chosen. And this presentation tonight is on the second option, and you should have that 11-page document in front of you. And from that 11-page document, we've produced 5 slides to speak towards, kind of summarize what that document says. So we were asked to look at 5 different scenarios for DCCs. The first base scenario is the one that includes all projects to be constructed: water, sewer, storm drainage, transportation, parks and rec, and the new one for fire hall, which the provincial government now allows DCCs to be collected for. That's the base scenario. The first scenario was to say, let's remove the proposed sanitary sewer extension, which is the phase F project to the Clark area. And the rationale for that is it's currently not part of the strategic strategies of council from the 2023 to 2026 document. But the phase F sewers are in your current DCC bylaw project list, and it is in your OCP, one of the phases of sewers to be extended to areas. The second scenario was, again, not including the sewers, but then creating an area-specific water DC for the WINS area only. The third scenario was saying not having an area-specific water service area for the Winds, but have one for Clark Drive. The fourth scenario says, well, what if you included the Phase F sewers and included a water service area, DCC, for the Winds? And then the fifth scenario was saying, include the Phase F sewers, don't include the Winds, water local service area, DCC, but create one for the Clark Drive. Any questions on that? Clear as mud?
Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Thank you. So with the Winds and Clark Drive, is that an either or could you have both? I think it's an either or, isn't it?
The analysis we've done is an either or.
Yeah.
But you could do both if you so choose, but we haven't costed that one out in this scenario.
And that's because of the grant will apply to either one or the other, most likely the Winds.
That was kind of the driving force behind it, is you do have a funding infrastructure grant from the province for extending water to the Winds. You had a referendum for that, that failed, and the discussion has said, well, could that actually be applied to the Clark Drive area as one of the water service areas? So we looked at that scenario.
Okay, and the main reason for the DCC, let's say for the Winds, is to lessen the cost for residents paying the pipe, or is there another reason too?
That's a good question. As we go through the analysis, we'll actually see that creating a water area DCC just for the Winds actually increases DCCs for development within that service area. The cost for the local residents is significantly lower than what was in the referendum, and that's partly because projects have been not included in the calculations for the local area's residents. And DCCs, just as a background, DCCs can only be charged to new development. So existing properties cannot be charged DCCs. So the mechanism was discussed, well, how do you get residents to pay for a service that they currently don't have, but could be provided to? And the discussion was, we'll create a water local service area.
Yeah.
And through that mechanism, you can then charge existing properties a fee to have water service or sanitary service brought to them.
And what is the range of things that this could be spent on?
I'm not sure of the question.
The DCC funds that are raised by the special levy in the wind service area, what could those funds be spent on?
Anything associated with the project
Okay.
within municipal road allowances, infrastructure that the municipality would own.
Okay, just within the service area or within all of Lantzville?
That would be a discussion with the province of where you could allocate those funds. We've priced it based on the water mains that need to be extended to service the Winds area.
Gotcha.
Only
that's the
those water
purpose.
mains.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Sure, I just had a quick one. So, you know, when it comes to DCCs, it's all about when you collect them as well. So I think it's, maybe if you can speak to that, because, you know, my understanding always is that, you know, subdivision is when those are collected. So if we have a project like Water to the Winds and we need the money now, it's kind of, the timing's off.
Yes.
So maybe you can comment to that and.
Yeah, I can briefly talk about that at this juncture. DCCs applied to all the different types of land use categories. Currently, there are 5. Residential development, single family, is generally collected at subdivision stage. Multifamily is generally collected at building stage, when you know actually how many units are being built. Commercial, industrial, institutional are generally also collected kind of at building permit stage.
Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
Thank you. I had a couple quick questions. I appreciate all of the hard work in the report. One was with regard to DCCs for the Winds area and water there. If DCCs are put into, if for the Winds water are put into this proposal, and that's what goes through, but then a developer comes along and puts in a big piece of infrastructure before subdivision, could they not receive credit for that? and then not be charged DCCs because they've put that in ahead of time? In other words, the DCCs are there if that doesn't happen, but if that does happen, they just get credit and not have to pay the DCCs.
In general, I would say yes, but.
Sorry, you just gotta put your microphone on.
Sorry, in general, I would say yes, but, you know, I would need to preface that with say, well, I'd need to actually look at what's being proposed versus the cost for the infrastructure versus what the DCC charges are. And how that project would actually fit within the overall scheme.
Okay. Just the reason I ask is there was at a public meeting in the spring, we received a letter on our agenda from a developer interested in rezoning in the Winds that had offered potentially as part of that rezoning process to put in the water main immediately upon rezoning before subdivision. And I don't think that it would make sense to charge twice, but if they're gonna put in the water main, get credit towards DCCs, and if they don't put in the water main, DCCs. My second question is with regard to sewer phase F. I understand that is in our official community plan at this time. It may not be specifically mentioned in strategic priorities. What would be the downside of having DCCs for that? Does it pose any risk to keep that in?
To keep the Phase F project in? I would say no, from my perspective. I mean, right now you have, I think, just under $600,000 in your sanitary sewer DCC. And the OCP has a 20-year sort of horizon viewpoint. So under the current sort of 3-year cycle of your strategic priorities, sanitary sewers are not a priority. But doesn't mean that after 2026, it might become a priority, or the next council might say, well, that is our priority now, not some other project. So I would take a longer term view and say, I would keep the sanitary sewer phase F in, or some sort of sewer project, because if you take it out completely, you have $600,000 sitting in your DCC account that can no longer be spent on infrastructure upgrades to service development.
Okay.
From my perspective.
That was my thinking as well. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Councillor Savage.
Yes, just to put a nip of clarity on Councillor Lerner's first question. With the G property, yes, if they pay for the pipe all the way close to the Winds already. However, they don't pay DCCs until they know what's going in on each commercial lot, because it's based on the size of the building, the DCCs. So would it not be the case that the buyer of the lot would pay the DCC, or does it still fall upon the master landowner, the developer?
Well, for commercial, institutional, industrial, it's based on square footage of building. So under that scenario, the developer who installs the water main would not necessarily be charged a DC or given a DCC credit, because there's no physical application or approval for the commercial building. So that would, I suspect that would be part of a community amendment, community contribution, sort of a community amendment agreement with the district and the developer. Say, well, we'll allow you to rezone the property if you do this.
Yeah, so would it not be the buyer, though, that would pay it, because they buy the lot, then they decide the size of the?
Correct.
Yeah. Yep.
Any other questions before I move on to slide 2? Okay. So slide 2 is just showing for the Clark Drive area, the sanitary sewer phase F. That's in your OCP. Phase F is not the actual sewer alignment. This is the conceptual plan for where the sewer mains would go. They're the ones in red. The blue is the water. And those would be the water projects that make up the Clark Drive local water service area, or the Clark Drive local area DCC. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll move to the next slide. So slide 3 is showing the Winds area. And the blue hatching is lands that are to be provided water according to your OCP map number 6, water service area. The purple line is kind of the proposed area for the local water service area and for the wind-specific water DCC area. And the projects that are associated with that is W3 and W4. Any questions on that? Okay. Oops, wrong way. Now, at the end is the actual table, and we've provided you with a larger printout, 11 by 17 papers that can help you actually see the text and not having to squint so much. And I thought I would just quickly sort of run through the scenario as it relates to single family and just do the comparison for that. And I know you can't see it on the screen, but you can follow along on the piece of paper in front of you. So on the far left of that table is the current DCC rates. And the first top one is for single family, and it totals $17,700.70. So that's currently what's being charged if the developer comes in and wants to do a single family subdivision. 3 columns over is the proposed DCC for single family, and that totals $26,320. Is everyone following that? Anyone lost or no? Okay. The green shading indicates that your grant funding that's been provided for the WINS, the $5.7 million, has been included in the calculation process. So if that funding was not available, the water DCC, which is currently shown at $10,973 proposed, would be much higher because there'd be another $5.7 million that needs to be collected through development and the existing community. Moving over to the next one, scenario 1, that's if you take out the phase F sanitary sewers. You can see on the sanitary sewer line, there's no cost there. All the other numbers are the same, and the resulting DCC would be $22,142. That's for single family. Moving over to the next columns, which is scenario 2, where again, we still do not have the phase F sewers, but we've created a water local service area for the WINS. So there's a specific DCC charged only for development within that WINS service area. That's in addition to all the other DCCs that are charged throughout the municipality on a wide basis. So within the municipality, there's the regular DCCs. Within the WINS, there's the regular DCCs plus the WINS local service area DCC. And so there's the 2 columns there, the DCC. So that would be the DCC charged everywhere else in the district, which would total $20,797. And then within the WINS area, their DCCs would be $26,858. And that's because the projects W3 and W4 are now only associated, the cost for those, to development within the WINS service area. So those costs have been taken out of the regular overall DCCs and attributed just to development within the WINS service area. So that's why you see the difference between the DCC municipal-wide and then the DCC within the WINS service area. There's just over a $6,000 difference. Any questions?
Councillor Savage.
Yes, just quickly, may I first say that just a great report. All the Coors reports are so good. We should have them framed on the wall here. There's so much content. But with this, the one concern I had was the park. It's actually been reduced by 11%. And in the staff report, it referenced this 2008 Parks and Trails Plan. However, offsetting that is in our council priorities, we've got 2 references to increasing parkland. One is to acquire as much land as possible through development, and the other was reference in the staff report acquisition of parkland. And as well, we changed the delegation of authority bylaw so that council now has the authority to decide cash in lieu, because this original parks plan was being so lean. Every time a rezoning came up, we went get parkland because of it. And then the last thing is that we're redoing that Parks and Trails plan as we speak. So my question is, could the parkland DCC be increased based on those facts? And would it be an onerous process or somewhat easy to do if council made a motion towards that?
Well, it's not overly arduous as long as someone has developed the costs for the proposed park projects. So as you noted, the park projects date back to the 2008 plan, in addition to other projects that staff had identified over the years and proposed, and there was kind of a lump sum allowance made each year for creating funds to purchase land without specifying exactly which parcel it was, and it was a nominal amount. When we did this update, we looked at the increase in land costs between 2018 and 2024 when we started this study. And so we significantly increased the actual purchase price for land, made it more realistic to what it would actually cost if you were to buy a waterfront parcel of property. But one of the reasons why you're noting that the park DCC is dropping is actually because there's more development allowed for under this proposed DCC update than one in the previous year. There's more residential development, there's more commercial land being proposed, and there's more industrial, more industrial land as well. So when you increase the denominator, the numerator has gone up, the total cost for all the infrastructure in the parkland has gone up, but the numerator has also gone up. And so when you divide the two, it actually results in a lower cost per unit.
Right, so if we, and then the last quick thing on that is the provincial government has prevented, in some cases, us acquiring parkland through development. It's not allowed. So that's another reason we would want to approach it a little more with DCCs. But just realistically, getting to the bottom line, if council did come up with a reason, what would be a justification for increasing it? And realistically speaking, the amount it is now, the base, whatever it is there, would it really be that much of an increase or not quite worth the bother?
Yeah, I can't comment until I know what those projects are and they're costed out. I mean, the general process for development of DCC bylaws as instructed by the provincial government and the best practices guide is a municipality establishes their OCP. Out of the OCP comes the master plans. So that would be your transportation, your water, your sewer, your storm drainage, your parkland, and your roads or your transport infrastructure. And of course now it would be fire halls and other emergency services, police stations as well. You can now include, and waste management can now be added into DCC collection processes. Once you have all those projects identified, then you go back and you say, what's the OCP projecting for growth? Here's the infrastructure to support that growth. What are the DCCs needed to develop that infrastructure that supports the growth?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it really begs the need to update your parks master plan.
Gotcha.
And that can be, it's not a 2-week process, it could be probably a year process, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
been worked
Director
on now.
Robinson, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, just in addition to those comments, I would say that once the parks plan has been updated and approved by council, we can initiate an amendment to the DCC bylaw to include the new projects in the DCC project.
Great, that clarifies it. Thanks very much, both, yeah.
All right, moving over to scenario 3, which is no Phase F sanitary sewers, and then creating the water service area for the Clark Drive. So instead of applying the infrastructure grant to the WINS, it's now been transferred over to Clark Drive, subject to the province obviously approving that and the residents approving that as well, and council. So for single family, DCCs, municipal wide would be $20,547, very similar to what would be the same charge for the WINS area. That would be scenario 2. And then within the Clark Drive, their total would be $24,995, slightly lower than what it would have been charged in the WINS area, which was at $26,852. And that's really just a function of there's more serviceable properties within the Clark Drive area than within the WINS area. existing development and proposed development as well. Any questions? Moving on to scenario 4, we've now brought the sanitary sewer phase Fs back in, and we're saying, let's create the WINS water local service area. Under that scenario, the DCC's municipal wide would be $24,975, and then just within the WINS water service area, they'd be $31,036. Scenario 5, no questions on 4. Scenario 5, single family, we've now said we're keeping the Phase F sewers in, and we're creating a water service area for the Clark Drive, but not for the WINS area. Under that scenario, the DCC's municipal wide are $24,725. Within the Clark Drive, they'd be $29,173. And that same calculation follows through for each of the proposed land use categories below for multifamily, congregate care facilities, commercial, institutional, and industrial. But I won't go through each one of those. Is there any questions on what we've presented?
Go ahead, Councillor Lerner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a question regarding the calculations as far as growth and how that feeds into the numbers. And reading through the report on in the main report that was provided with our agenda, it's page 28 of our agenda. It's figure 1 on one of the reports. It shows the District of Lantzville population, historic and projected. And it shows to 2044 a projection of 4,409 population, I guess based on historic rates and things like that. But then there's a figure 2 on page 31 of our agenda that has projected number of units based on the housing needs report, which shows 135 to 840 units. And so what I'm trying to understand, if we hit 840 units, the population growth would be far greater than 400 people.
Correct.
So is the projected range basically taking halfway through middle of the number of units and saying that's the population growth, or are they calculated independent of each other?
Independent. So the first graph you referred to, that's a graph where we developed, we showed the population counts for census, Canada Census, and then we also included the population estimates and projections as done by BC Stats. So BC Stats does a population estimate every year, and then they also do a projection out for the next 20 to 25 years. And right now it goes out, I think, to 2046, which is 21 years. The census counts are done only once every 5 years. Your BC Housing Report has a different, well, they've done an analysis based on requirements from the provincial government to accommodate more growth faster and to allow for different types of development on single family lots. And they are projecting significantly more development than what BC Stats is. I can't rationalize or tell you why they're different. I can just state that they are. And so we've used the most current document that is available, and that be the BC Housing Needs Assessment. That was done for the regional district, but includes Lantzville.
Great, thank you. Master follow-up? Thank you. So if we get to a point where it's time, I assume it's been about 6 years since we've last updated, 6 or 7 years since we last updated our DCC report. So assuming that this process carries out and we update the DCCs with this information, and then 5 years from now, we suddenly see projected growth or actual growth that is far outpacing what was in the projections from Census Canada or the Housing Needs Report, we could then at that time amend it, I assume.
Yes, the provincial government under the BC Best Practices Guide recommends that you do a minor amendment to your DCC bylaw once a year, and then do a major amendment once every 5 years. Minor amendment would be what projects have been completed, take them off the list, recalculate the DCCs. Major amendment says, okay, relook at everything again. Look at your growth projections, look at the infrastructure needed to service that growth. What's the new calculation for the DCCs? In general, municipalities sort of do that major update once every 5 to 10 years. Generally longer than 5.
Right.
Because it's a long process, and your OCPs are generally, you know, they have a 20-year horizon. You might do a sort of a mini amendment in the 5 or 10-year range. But there's lots that goes on in between that. There's rezoning applications and things change. So to answer your question, yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councillor Savage?
Thank you. So just to put the finishing touch on this decision whether to have both the Clark area and the Winds area with a special DCC for water, in my mind, the Clark area where you've got Clark Med, development bringing the water pipe when they develop all the way down to the other areas, even putting a sleeve under the railway for one area that wants it, it would be unfair for them to also charge them a DCC to extend the sewer or extend the water beyond that to help others, since they've already done so much cost with the pipe. So in that case, we could amend the DCC in time to capture new development in new areas of water extension, put the DCC on at that point, so just the new development beyond Clark Med would be paying the extra DCC. That would be a possible scenario, would it?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to skin the cat,
Yeah,
if I could use that colloquial phrase.
yeah,
There's lots of ways of
good. All right.
resolving those outstanding
Yeah.
perceived issues.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
I would just preface of an overarching comment is if you do create local DCCs for either the Clark or the Winds, because their rates are higher, de facto, you're encouraging development to go elsewhere within the district. Because a developer will look and say, why would I develop in the Clark and the Winds, where I have to pay an extra $6,000 per lot, where I could do a development outside of that area and not pay that cost? That's just the way the numbers work.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
And just, it's always good to hear the answers from the experts. So the question I have has to do with if we have an existing phase development agreement in place, what DCC bylaw applies. I think I already know the answer, but it's always best to hear it from the experts, and then it's in a recorded meeting.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I would defer to the provincial government on that. But reading the best practices guide, there is a latecomers agreement. I think it's called latecomers. Can't remember exactly the terminology, but basically, when a new DCC bylaw is passed, if a developer already has their development application in and it's approved, then they can choose which DC they fall under. So it's called in-stream. So if they're in-stream, it's been approved, it's ready for development, just hasn't broken ground yet, and the DCC bylaw is updated, the developer can then choose which bylaw they want applied to their project.
Okay. Good stuff. Any further questions from council? And is there more? Is that it for the presentation?
That's everything I plan on talking about.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, through to council, there's some recommendations there from the committee to council. Is someone prepared to move the first one? Go ahead, Councillor Lerner.
The Committee of the Whole recommends that council instruct staff to bring forward a draft amendment to the development cost charge bylaw to add a fire protection facility DCC.
Yeah, I'll second it, and then for discussion, go ahead if you wish, Councillor Lerner.
Not much to say here. It's something that the province now allows us to do. And I think that even if we were to be successful at some point in obtaining a grant for a fire facility, there will always be additional costs and additional requirements for future facilities. So I support this. Thank you.
Okay, I have nothing further to add. Anybody else on council? Okay, nothing. I'll call the question then. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. Next one, if someone wishes to make the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Lerner.
The Committee of the Whole recommends the council instruct staff to bring forward a draft amendment to the development cost charge bylaw to create an area-specific water DCC for the winds.
And do we have seconder? Well, I guess I'll second it. And then for discussion, if you wish, Councillor Lerner.
Yeah, I want to hear what council has to say about this. I understand that we have received a grant. I understand there's a lot of additional costs, and I also understand that we've received that letter from a developer interested in putting forward the pipe in order for us to utilize the grant money in time. So this might be moot. I'm somewhat interested to hear what council thinks, especially with regard to what would happen if that rezoning didn't go through or anything like that. So I'm just curious to hear what people's thoughts are. Thank you.
Okay, for myself, nothing to add at this time. Anything from anybody else? Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, I would certainly support this. It does not punish the G for already bringing the water pipe there. And they've been waiting so long for water up there, some people, that any people that want to develop up there would contribute to the pipe. And that seems very fair to me, that new development in that area would have to contribute to the pipe, therefore reducing the cost for the annual cost. And I believe this was the situation with the Med property, where the Phase 2 sewer, when they join in, it will eventually be applied to the annual payment of the others. It will reduce that payment. I think that's the way it works. So it seems very fair to me that that this is being done. It only affects new development beyond the G property within that water service area. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Go ahead, Councillor Mundell.
Just more of a question, just for my clarity here on this one, that we're specifically looking at the water project, so that's scenario, are we sort of honing in on a scenario with this one versus including the both, would be, I think, scenario 4 would be both, whereas this one, it sounds like we're just speaking to water. Is that what this committee, the whole recommendation would be, just around water?
Go ahead, Director Robinson.
Sorry, press the wrong button there. Your worship, to the councillor, so we've basically broken the 4 main things that we're kind of seeking direction on before we prepare the bylaw. They could be voted on together. So for example, if you did want to add the water DCC, the area specific that Coors has highlighted here, it would be scenario 2 that you're essentially voting on right now. But then there's a motion later on about the Phase F sewer. So then that would basically make it scenario 4, if you added that one on top, if that makes sense.
Kind of, yeah, I just wondered if they were meant to be separate or together.
Well, when we were kind of formulating the report, we wanted to give the committee maximum flexibility to decide how you wanted to proceed.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Okay, I'll move to call in question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. And then we got the third one. Someone prepared to move that.
Just a point of
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
order on this one. I think I should maybe recuse myself from voting on this specific one, just because it's in relation to my neighborhood. So I don't want to be perceived as having a bias. I'm not sure.
Well, I think you can just declare a conflict of interest, common law bias, and then vacate, but you have to state it.
Okay, I will declare conflict on this one just because it affects my neighborhood.
Okay, I'll get the motion on the floor that the committee of the whole recommends that council instructs staff to bring forward a draft amendment to the development cost charge bylaw to create an area-specific water DCC for Clark Drive, open bracket, water projects, W5 and W6, close bracket. Is there a second? Second by Councillor Savage. And then for discussion, for myself, nothing really to add further to this one. I think it's all pretty self-explanatory, but go ahead, Councillor Savage, if you wish.
Yes, I think what we're looking at here is the reason we put this on the floor would be to defeat it if we're looking at scenario 4, which is the one I support. And the reason for defeating it for me is quite simple, is that we have the Clark Med development that is yet to have been done. They're already paying a healthy amount for water, DCC. They're paying $5,030 per house, taking the single-family house example. They're already paying that amount. Plus, they got a $250,000 credit for previous contributions and infrastructure they did. That's for sewer, I think it was. But, oh, sorry, that was sewer I was referring to. So at any rate, with the water, they already are paying a healthy DCC. And it just seems unfair that if we now invoke this, that we would be adding an extra about $4,500, I think it is. Yeah, about an extra $4,500 on top of that, where they would not only be putting in the pipe and slipping it under the railway, but they would also be subsidizing future residents outside of their area, not with the regular water DC, but with the special DCC. So I just think it's better to determine, first of all, the local water service area that we would be looking at if we are putting water to the Blackjack Elm Road area. And then once you've established that water service area, then amend the DCC bylaw to charge the extra DCC for any new development in the Elm Road, Blackjack Road area. That just seems a fairer way to go about it. And that's exactly what we're doing with the WINs. It will only apply to new development, and it excludes the developer that's bringing it all the way to the WINs area. So that would seem fair to me, but if you disagree with that, please let me know, and thank you.
Councillor Lerner and then myself.
Yeah, thank you for the comments around the table. My understanding is different. My understanding is that if the DCC bylaw changes and a project's already been approved, we heard today from Coors Engineering that, if I understand correctly, the developer gets to choose which DCC bylaw to follow because they're in stream. So they wouldn't actually be charged that extra money. It would be, the Clark Med developer would not have to pay these additional DCCs if they didn't want to, because they're already in stream. Only new development on top of that in that area would have to pay, and maybe I'm misunderstanding that, but the other thing is on page 81 of our agenda, there is a proposed local service area for this particular, it's the proposed Clark area specific water DCC and water local service area, which is, if this passes, this would be the map on page 81 of our agenda. So I think there is a local service area proposed, and I think it would not, the fees would not apply to the Clark Med developer, because they would have the choice of whether to pay them or not. But I would love to hear if I'm wrong on that. Thank you.
Yeah, for myself, I don't see there being any issue for the reasons just mentioned. That was the reason why I asked earlier the question around which DCC bylaw applies, and we already heard from, from the presenter. I'm not going to call you an expert now, but I'll call you the presenter. But nonetheless, you know, the developer will get to choose. The other piece I think we have to, and correct me if I'm wrong through the staff, this is, you know, the way things are being characterized now is that the developer is actually putting in the pipe. But if we are, you know, as we were already trying to do it with the winds, there was no developer assisting. We as a municipality, on behalf of the residents, were going to put the pipe in with the grant, and then the balance of the funds were going to come from through a loan, essentially, to be paid back through a local area service petition, or through a local area service, sorry, establishment bylaw. So, you know, I think we have to be careful not to just assume that a developer is going to be coming forward right away and doing it in tandem with us or with a grant or the residents. But maybe Director Robinson, you can elaborate further.
You're on the right track, Your Worship. I do want to note that if you look at the maps for both of these proposed area-specific DCCs, both of them have these large development sites. The Winds project has the G properties, obviously, and the Clark project, the Clark area-specific has the Clark Med properties, obviously, but there's a number of other areas and lots that are captured in that. So any of those lots would also be up for redevelopment would also be captured in this. For example, the Clark area-specific DCC map includes the private school lands. And so there's an institutional rate that would increase to help to extend the water main through this area to the private school. And they would pay a higher elevated DCC rate, which would allow the municipality to proceed with the project faster than if that DCC did not exist. So there's a number of other properties in the area that would also be assessed the DCC that would enable the project to move forward faster than if it didn't exist, if that helps to explain.
Yes, thank you for that. Through to council, anything further? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yeah, sorry, just through chair to staff, I just wanted to confirm that is the case. Sorry, I forgot that if you have a phased development agreement that's already been done, that you can't retroactively increase such things as DCCs with perhaps some perimeter exceptions to that.
You're quite right, Councillor, and Chris pointed out quite correctly that the developer does get to choose changes in development cost charge bylaw if they already have an in-stream application, as the province calls it.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. In that case, I'll certainly be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move then to calling the question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. And then we got the next one. I'll make that motion that the...
Point of order?
Oh, yeah.
Did we want to bring Councillor?
All right, we have seat contact, so I'll get right to it. That the Committee of the Whole recommends that council instructs staff to not include a sanitary sewer DCC for Phase F sewer expansion as part of the amendments to the development cost charge bylaw. Is there a seconder to that? You don't have to second it. You want to second it? Okay, Councillor Savage seconding it for discussion. If you wish, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, yes, I would like to include the Phase F sewer expansion. So I'll make a proposed amendment, and that is to strike the word not.
Yeah, I'll second that. And then for discussion, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
No, we've already had a great explanation of this previously, so I think it's important to include it for a whole host of reasons. So I won't go into them all, but I think it was well explained before, so I certainly support this. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on the amendment? So I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Main motion as amended. Anything further? Okay, I'll move to call in question then. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. Okay, any late items to be introduced? Notices of motion? Public clarification, so persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record and the agenda item for which they are seeking clarification, and may speak once for up to 2 minutes to ask clarification questions. For example, how did the vote go? Any technicality requests, interpretation of abbreviations or jargon used during a meeting. Looking to the gallery. Any remotely registered popping in? Nope. Okay. All right, we've made it through, so I declare the committee of the whole meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and we're just gonna do a little 5-minute break before we start the council meeting at 6:55.